Okay. Hi, this is Elliot Fishman, and I'm speaking to you from New York. Actually, the World Trade Center is right behind me here. The free hours, I should say it that way. And hope everyone's doing okay. I probably will be joined by a pet in a few moments, as by my daughter's place in New York, and our friendly dog Bamba is trying to jump on me here. Come on, Bamba. Okay, all right, so now he's happy. Okay, so hope everyone's doing well. It's the Thursday, the 26th of June. It's hard to imagine it's almost going to be February, next Wednesday. So this will be the last time I'll speak to you in January. In looking at some of the topics we have spoken about, we do speak about incidentalomas. I've given talks about incidentalomas and how we evaluate incidentalomas, how do we deal with them. We talk about adrenal, we talk about pancreatic cysts, we talk about lung nodules, we talk about many different things. And then the challenge always is, what's important? What do you follow? What don't you follow? If you're going to follow things, how do you do it? What do you do with an incidental 3-centimeter adrenal lesion in a patient who has no known adrenal symptoms or no hypertension or Cushing's? Dual phase studies, more multi-phase studies for doing an adrenal washout or MR. Typically CT is the way to go, but those are incidental findings. So we know from looking at CTs, no matter why we do a CT scan, there's lots of things we could find that perhaps we really weren't looking for. And we speak about the challenges. There's something new that's become another thing thought about. Instead of the word incidental findings, it's what about opportunistic CT screening? Now, it's an interesting term. There's a really good article, Perry Pickard from Wisconsin, state of the art in radiology, a couple months ago. It's definitely worthwhile reading. And here's what you mean by opportunistic CT screening. And I think this opportunistic way of thinking about things is going to be especially popular as AI becomes more and more front and center. Now, you remember, if you've been around, there was a period of time when CT screening was done. That is, you scanned a patient who was well, you were looking for incidental findings that provided information to act upon. You also know that we do many screening things with CT. Forget virtual colonoscopy, that's a small thing perhaps in terms of numbers, but coronary calcification scoring is a very big thing. So, but what else is there? If you think about it, if you have a CT scan of the chest and abdomen, and it's not for screening, it's for abdominal pain, chest pain, whatever the reason is, you'll look for the problem that's at hand or something unexpected. But when you talk about opportunistic CT scanning, it's trying to say that we need to look at many things on the CT in a more quantitative fashion. And so the point would be, if you thought about a CT of the abdomen, for example, and let's just say you had right lower quadrant pain, real appendicitis, and there was or there's no appendicitis, okay, fine. But you realize you could look at the liver, right? You could look at the liver for fatty infiltration or mild textural changes. Maybe the patient has unsuspected parenchymal liver disease and you can act upon that. You could look at the subcutaneous fat. Maybe there's too much fat and maybe the patient has reasons for that. Overweight, so they need to go on a diet, diabetes, whatever the reason might be, something to act upon. You'll see the aorta. We talk about calcium scoring, but what about aortic calcium? If the patient has significant calcification, it's one thing if the patient is 95, it's another thing if they're 45 and there's calcification. What do you do about that? Do you look more carefully at their cholesterol? Do you get a coronary CTA also? Or do you simply put them on the statins because they are depositing calcification in their vessel and you want to be proactive? We also talk about looking at the psoas muscles and paraspinal muscles. Can you talk about the patient's general state of health? Is the patient equal to their age or better than their age or worse than their age? We talk about also looking at the spleen, looking at size, and then looking at bone. Is the forgetting worrying about osteophytes or degenerative change? Okay, that's great. That goes with aging, but so what? But what about the trabecular bone? Is the patient osteopenic? You know, on CT, we sometimes comment on osteopenia, but most people don't. You appreciate the sagittal view. One of the companies, I think Zebra Technologies, actually got approval and AMA a code for scoring, because osteoporosis is a real big challenge in older patients, particularly women who may not be that much older, because of all complications of vertebral collapse. Well, radiologists aren't that good at just looking, or maybe they don't pay that much attention, but it's hard to quantify. If it's really osteopenic, that's easy. But there's a whole range of things, and there's a range of normals. Should we be commenting on that? Now, what you can ask me very quickly then is, oh dear, if I read the scan and now I got to comment on the bones for osteoporosis and the subcu fat and the muscles for a sarcopenia score, and looking at and quantifying calcification, and looking and quantifying the liver and the pancreas, I might be taking a very long time to read the study, or I might be so focused on these opportunistic findings that I kind of miss the finding that is the reason the patient came to work. I think the way this is going to go, and the reason, a really good article as mentioned by Perry, is because most of the things I mentioned, from looking at the liver, to measuring subcu fat, to a sarcopenia score, to a score for the spine, is going to be automated. There's AI programs. I mentioned Zebra with the spine, but there are other companies beyond Zebra that can do it as well. We mentioned everything quantification. We talk about calcium scoring in the heart, but what about calcium scoring? Okay, here's Bob, but he wanted to say hi. Calcium scoring in the aorta or iliac vessels. So I think the thing that you're going to see perhaps is this idea of being able to quantify things, but have the computer quantify things. Now we'll have to think out loud. What are we going to do? Are we going to follow patients over time to look for improvement? But remember, we get so many scans, and yes, it's only one time point, but perhaps you could make important decisions for that patient based on that single time point. If the patient's osteopenic, you need to do something about it. There are new drugs that work really well. If the patient has liver disease, what's the reason? Is it something we do something about? Maybe it's dietary, maybe it's alcohol use, things we could do something about. Patient has sarcopenia, maybe the patient isn't exercising, or maybe the patient has other problems, dietary or what, that's limiting what they're able to do. So I think this idea about opportunistic evaluation, whether it's looking at metabolic syndrome or diffuse liver disease, whether it's looking at bone, are all things that are a really good way of thinking about things. Now, I will say, what's the biggest problem? Okay, there's no reimbursement, and that's going to be a problem. Okay, will there ever be reimbursement? Well, someone may say, hey, you're paid to read the CT scan. Quantification of things. If you say the patient looks osteoporotic, how osteoporotic are they? And is it something you're over-reading or under-reading? You need numbers. Remember, everything is numbers. When you do scoring with numbers, then you get rid of a lot of the individual variation, and you get much stronger onto the onto real science. So I think this article by Perry also made the point about potential barriers, made the point about intent, and what we could see. And I think, to me, that's going to be what's exciting. I think the potential for using CT as a way of quantifying, doing a study for health. It may be possible, we're so good at this, the patients will get a low-dose CT scan, non-contrast, that will look at 10 or 20 factors that impact on the patient's lives and will allow us to intervene when it's time to intervene and allow us to follow patients. So I think it's very interesting. I recommend you think about it, you read some articles about it, and pay lots of attention to it, because I think it's one of the next big things coming along at CT. So with that, I'm going to stop there. Hope you like the view, and I wish everybody a great day.